I'm going to start that recording now, and then we'll be able to share this with folks that weren't able to attend tonight. My name is Megan Mayola Heath. I'm the marketing manager for the Coalition for the Poudre River Watershed. And hopefully you're in the right place. We have a Monument Gulch aerial mulch community meeting right now in this Zoom room. So thank you all for being here. Just a couple housekeeping items. Like I said, the webinar will be recorded, and we will be happy to email that out to you all tomorrow or the next day. We have about an hour, and Shayna is going to be giving us a presentation. Hally's going to also start us off with some info about CPRW, but we will have plenty of time for questions, so feel free to put your questions into the chat and we will get to those, or we can just have kind of an open discussion at the end. And then if you don't mind staying on mute during the webinar, that button is located in the lower left corner of your screen. So from there, I'm going to hand it off to Hally. Thank you all for being here.
Thanks, Megan. Hi, everyone. I recognize a few names, but I don't know all of you. So I'm Hally Strevey. I'm CPRW's new executive director. I also wanted to just introduce other CPRW staff and partners that are on the call tonight. So we have Daniel Bowker, who is our forester, Shayna Jones, who many of you have been communicating with, our post-fire program manager, Galen Friesen, who is our new post-fire restoration intern, and then Jennifer Dial, who is one of our partners, and she works for the city of Greeley. All right, so I'm gonna share my screen and start us off here tonight. All right, so for those of you who aren't familiar with the Coalition for the Poudre River Watershed, our mission is to improve and maintain the ecological health of the watershed through community collaboration. So exactly what we're doing tonight. So and all of the work that we do, we really try to collaborate closely with our partners and landowners and anyone who might be impacted by the work that we're doing. We have several different focus areas. So we have this handy dandy collaborate, plan, restore, and watch, so CPRW. So that collaboration, like I mentioned, is key to everything that we do, along with planning. So we have been working off of our Upper Poudre Resiliency Plan since the 2012 High Park and Hewlett Gulch wildfires to help reduce risk of future wildfires in the watershed. And then similarly, after the Cameron Peak fire, we've been planning with partners to prioritize areas to do the aerial mulching along with other post-fire restoration work. And then restoration is also a huge piece of what we do. And then watch stands for our monitoring work. So we have a citizen science water quality monitoring program. And then we also monitor some of our other post-fire restoration projects. So we do all of that through forest restoration and reducing risk of wildfires, river restoration. We have a common theme with everything that we do with watershed resilience. So increasing resilience of the watershed. So basically focusing our work in ways that we reduce risk of future fires or floods. And if those fires or floods do happen, the impacts aren't as great as they would be otherwise. And then of course, post-fire restoration. So CPRW has a long history of leading post-fire restoration efforts. We were initially started after the 2012 High Park and Hewlett Gulch wildfires that burned over 90,000 acres of the watershed. At the time, I'm sure many of you are very familiar with those fires, but that was the largest wildfire in Larimer County history. The High Park fire was. And so we were formed in response to the restoration needs following the High Park fire. So we were an informal collaborative of a variety of different entities, including municipalities, nonprofits, the county, and state and local government that came together to form the High Park Fire Coalition. And this initial group was really successful at mobilizing on the ground resources to do post-fire restoration work, fundraising, et cetera. And our initial founders decided that there would be and knew that there would be a lot of merit in having a formal watershed coalition to shepherd this work forward. And so in May 2013, we became an official 501c3 nonprofit. So we're going on almost 10 years of being a nonprofit. Our current board is made up of representatives from City of Fort Collins Utilities and City of Greeley Water and Sewer, Larimer County, Rocky Mountain Flycasters, which is a branch of Colorado Trout Unlimited. We also have a local landowner, Carestream Health, which represents some of our interests in the lower watershed, so through Greeley and Windsor, and then the Mighty Arrow Foundation, and then also retired U.S. Forest Service. So I also wanted to just quickly review some of our lessons learned from the High Park fire. So after the High Park fire, this was really kind of one of the first efforts for mulching in Colorado for high severity burns. So we treated over 6,000 acres with both straw and wood mulch. So there was a total of 880 acres that were mulched with wood straw and 4,700 acres that were mulched with agricultural straw. And then around 800 acres of a mix of both wood and ag straw. So after applying these two different types of mulches, both wood and ag straw, we learned a few things. So while the agricultural straw is much cheaper to apply, it's just cheaper in general to purchase, we found that it moved around a lot with the wind, and it also brought in invasive plant species. So that was really not ideal. The wood mulch we found, while it was more expensive, it ended up staying on the hill slopes longer and was better at preventing erosion from going into stream systems. And so basically from this kind of trial run after the High Park fire, we realized that wood mulch was really going to be the best way to go for the Cameron Peak fire. So that has been what we've focused on for all of the application that we've done so far. And it's what will be applied this year as well. I also just wanted to share some of the research that's been going on following the mulching effort. So after the High Park fire, CSU researchers did find that sites that were mulched were more effective at reducing hill slope erosion. So unmulched sites actually produced more sediment in both 2013 and 2014. So currently, we are working with CSU and also the U.S. Forest Service Rocky Mountain Research Station on some additional research, specifically in Bennett Creek. And they're looking at the impacts of the mulch on reducing sediment. Again, also impacts of the mulch on water quality. They're also looking at different coverages of mulches. So looking at low coverage, medium, and high coverage, and seeing what the difference is between those different types of coverage, what it produces in terms of erosion into stream systems.
Hey, Hally, we'll wait
Yeah.
here. Can you talk a little bit about the invasive species from the straw mulch? What did you see come in?
That's a really great question. I don't know what specific species actually came in off the top of my head, but I know that it was concerning enough to the Forest Service that they really didn't want to use it again. So I think it was probably a lot of invasive annuals, so things like cheatgrass and just other things that take over really quickly after disturbance. And so that was really kind of one of the main factors of not using it, plus the fact that it just really doesn't stay on hill slopes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And Daniel or Jen, I don't know if you know specifically any of the invasives that might have come in with the ag mulch, but I can't remember off the top of my head.
No, Hally, I'm not sure either. I would think, thistle mull and cheatgrass, things like that, like you said, that take over quickly. Yep.
Okay, so I think I'm up next. So let me work on sharing my screen first. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Shayna Jones, the post-fire program manager. So I've met some of you, but not all. So I actually joined the coalition last summer, just as we were launching into our 2021 mulch program. So just wanted to talk a little bit about why we want to mulch and where this year. So first, just a bit of background about some of the post-fire impacts and issues and why we want to mulch. So mulching is a treatment, like Hally was saying, it's intended to help with the impact of hill slope erosion that we tend to see for several years after severe fires. Diagram on the left just shows you a typical rainstorm and ecosystems before a fire. So in that case, you know, the hill slope's able to absorb some of the water from the rainstorm and recharge groundwater, with some runoff heading into our streams and tributaries. But with the after fire diagram on the right, without that leaf litter to help absorb water, we tend to see excess runoff and sediment, which can overwhelm existing tributaries and streams and lead to issues like head cuts, incision, erosion, and sediment pulses propagating further downstream. So knowing that, why do we want to mulch? Keeps the soil on the hill slopes, helps reduce erosion, adds texture to the soil, slows down water as it runs downhill, reducing peak flows, runoff, debris flow initiation. Aids in the recovery of vegetation, keeping soils moister and cooler after rainfall. And as Hally was mentioning, you know, using wood mulch was found to not introduce weeds or invasive species. Okay, so I have a good video. Last summer, Megan put together this great video that gives an overview of aerial mulching, just in case you didn't get a chance to see it in action last summer. So here we go. Okay, yeah, so that's a really good overview of what things look like when we're doing area mulching and some of the key points. This next slide just shows what we did in 2021. So last year we were able to mulch about 5,000 acres. Many of you might have seen the helicopters going at some point in the summer. So colored areas on this map are the areas we mulched last year. And as mentioned in the video, we selected those areas based on several different types of hazard assessment modeling and prioritization exercises, and then verified all these areas before we mulch them. And so similarly, we are looking to do some of that work again in 2022. So priority areas for this year, in addition to Monument Gulch, which we'll talk and show you a map about today, we're looking at areas along the South Fork as well, Pennock Pass, the Upper Bennett Creek area, several areas in the Sheep Creek area, which is just west of Black Hollow, and a few areas in the upper Poudre near Boston and Tunnel Peaks. So this is based on initial prioritization and modeling. In total, we're looking at a little bit over 4,000 acres of potential mulching this year in those combined areas. And so similar to last year, we identify these preliminary areas in GIS based on soil burn severity, slope, and hazard modeling. Then we conduct field verification, which is underway for the year, to verify that conditions identified are accurate. And I think it's important to note that areas that have a lot of rock or natural regeneration of vegetation are removed from mulching areas, because if these areas have a lot of rock or revegetation coming back on its own, that reduces the effectiveness of and necessity for mulching. So those are some of the modifications we make after observing field conditions. Okay, so the map here on the left is showing a zoomed out version that shows you some of the areas on the South Fork and Pennock as well. These are areas that we've verified and would like to mulch. Those are about 1,000 acres of mulching in the area total. So the image on the right is more zoomed in on Monument Gulch and has property names listed for reference. And I just wanted to mention I can also email out this map after this presentation and this meeting for those who want to take a closer look at the specific areas. But yeah, basically these maps are the combined product of the GIS exercise I was talking about, as well as crews being out in the field and taking a look at things and making sure that the conditions we're seeing are suitable and best suited for effective mulch treatments. As far as the logistics of what this would look like in the Monument Gulch area, so mulch will primarily be made at the Jack's Gulch campground area on Forest Service land. So we have those permissions, I think, nearly in place, and so that mulching effort, making the mulch, will happen in June. Then the helicopter contractor estimates that the timing for mulching in the Monument Gulch area would be in early July. Should take about 2 weeks to complete, if maybe not a little bit less, but 2 weeks to be conservative. The coalition staff will be on site to conduct verification protocols of the mulched areas right after they're mulched. And we'll provide notice of timing of operations, give you guys as much notice as possible. I think there's a lot of good, safe viewing areas in the Monument Gulch area where you can watch the mulch being applied. We just ask that you don't, stand directly in an area that's being mulched just for safety concerns. I wanted to mention that we do have permissions on file for most properties. We're missing a few, and I've been in touch with all those folks and heard back from some, nearly all of them. So in the next week or two, I'll be following up to get those final permissions in place for those few properties where I don't have them. Then I also wanted to mention while I had you guys all here that there are other post-fire projects and some that we'd like to do in the area. So our post-fire strategy is to pair mulch treatments with other types of treatments where needed. So for example, stream stabilization and reforestation projects. Now we've done a little bit of that in Monument Gulch area already last year and have some additional plans potentially for 2022. So we're currently drafting some initial plans for a stream stabilization project near the Forest Service Road that's just south of Broadtail in Monument Gulch, and those are what the pictures are from. So you can see that tributary has some stabilization work we could help with, we think. Goal would be to stabilize the eroding stream banks and slow the pulses of excess sediment down into the streams. Pending Forest Service approval, we do have we have grant funding available this year and next. And actually it goes a little bit further so that we can continue to monitor the project after it's constructed. I also wanted to mention that we do have a reforestation program. The coalition's been working with a diverse set of partners on a larger reforestation effort in the watershed. We've done some planting already in Monument Gulch and know that a few others are interested, just in talks with some of us. And we've been tracking that interest, but if you're interested in tree planting and haven't discussed it with anybody at the coalition yet, please reach out and we'll make sure that we have you on the list. We do have grant funds that cover the costs associated with planting. And then I just wanted to mention, we do have an online map that shows upcoming work just across the burn area. There's a lot of different groups doing work this summer. So there's a link, but we can send it out in information after this meeting. And so as projects continue to develop, we're hoping that we get them all there on that map so that you have a sense of what's going on across the whole area if you're interested. And with that, we can open it up for questions. I think Megan, Hally, and I have been talking about, we'll post a recording of this presentation or email it out along with some of the resources we mentioned, maps and such following this meeting. But we have lots of time for questions if folks have them.
I don't have any question, but I want to say
And I
again.
did add a few links to the chat there. That ArcGIS link is the map that Shayna mentioned. There's also a link to our reforestation page, and then I'm going to put a few more in there. So feel free to explore those and let us know if you have any questions.
And sorry, Bert, we didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Oh, it's fine. I was just saying, I just once again want to thank all of you for your hard work and all you have done for us in Monument Gulch. Thank you.
Well, yeah, you're most welcome. We're excited to be able to mulch in the area. I might offer that there are some areas in Monument Gulch that look like, they need a little bit of help to get on the right trajectory, but there were also a lot of areas that were looking a lot better than I was expecting. So that's always nice to see as well.
You bet.
So will some of the information you send out be the reforestation information?
We certainly can. And I would just also say that, I don't know if Daniel and Megan have anything to add about the reforestation effort, but we're just trying to keep a good list going because we should have, funding and resources so that wouldn't be at a cost for you guys if folks are interested. And I think reforestation pairs pretty well with mulch.
Okay.
Yeah, Shayna, I can add just a little bit to that. Thanks for the question there. As far as reforestation goes, we're working hard to get about 25,000 trees in the ground in the next 2 years, something like that. And we're pretty much out of the window, even though we got some nice moisture up there right now. As far as getting trees in the ground this spring or summer, that's pretty unlikely at this point, but we will be working on areas in the fall. We're probably going to have the Larimer County Conservation Corps and some volunteer groups and others doing the planting for us. We're also working with the U.S. Forest Service on areas that they're planting. So it'll be a big effort. And I know a few of you have expressed your desire to Shayna to be part of that effort, and we certainly appreciate that. We've got you on a list. And as we verify areas as far as priority, how many seedlings we have and that kind of thing, we will reach back out. But as far as trees in the ground, it'll probably be this fall, and then spring 2023 is when a lot of that'll happen. So hopefully, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I was just wondering if you'd have recommendations for what trees to plant. We got a bunch of seedlings, 60 of them, and planted them, but we wondered if there were other specific species we should be targeting, or what works best up there for reforesting.
Right, absolutely. No, that's a great question. And so what we've really focused on so far is ponderosa pine. And you guys in Monument Gulch are, right around 9,000 feet, maybe a little bit below, maybe a little above in some spots. And so that's slightly at the top end of the range for ponderosa pine. But what we're doing is we're working with a lot of other organizations, particularly the Nature Conservancy and some of their scientists on climate modeling and that kind of thing. And it's really looking like ponderosa pine is going to be a winner for your area. As things get hotter and drier, it will do better at higher elevation. That said, there are a lot of areas in Monument Gulch that were lodgepole pine, and some of them are coming back pretty well in lodgepole pine. And so lodgepole pine is a good choice of species. I know Bert is looking at some spruce and some lodgepole and possibly some Doug fir, I think. Is that right, Bert?
Yes, it is.
Great,
Yes.
thank you for her areas. And those are really good choices, especially near the stream drainages and some, wetter, more protected areas, maybe north facing slopes, northeast facing slopes, that kind of thing. And that's nice to have a little bit more of a mix. You guys did have a pretty nice mix of Doug fir and spruce on the streams and lodgepole pine and ponderosa. So those are 4 really good ones to pick there. Aspen are going to hopefully come back pretty well on their own. Aspen loves fire. And so you're going to see a lot of aspen sprouts and suckers and that kind of thing coming up. If you don't,
the aspen they're already sprouting this spring. We've got them 3 foot high, and they're getting thick up there. Bird's Place is covered in them.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's great. And the elk and the moose and everybody really like those aspen suckers too. So those are good. Probably no need to plant those, but if you had an area that was a little bit wetter and you didn't see aspen, that's a good choice as well.
I have a question, Dan. I'm Katie. It's what's on the map is the Fisher Thompson property. It's the one I'm sure you're familiar, where the house is going up. We have not been in touch about tree planting with you all yet. Mostly because we're all down in Denver, so not nearby, and we're concerned about what type of, were we to plant seedlings, what type of care and maintenance, if any, would they need? Because we're not going to be able to water regularly or anything. So
oh, exactly.
Yeah.
That's a great question, Katie. And all the plantings we're going to be doing won't get any care. And that's kind of the gamble you take. We're doing our best to plant, really only north or northeast facing slopes to get the most moisture. We're also doing some things, just some kind of site level techniques, like using nurse objects, things like rocks or stumps or down logs, anything like that. If you stand out there about 2 o'clock in the afternoon and look where the shade is, that's where you want to plant. Those are going to be the spots that, are going to survive the best from wind and sun and that kind of thing. So, using some of those local features is really helpful. And then there's been a lot of good research lately about if it's a little dip or a little swale or something like that, or even if you can take a shovel or a dibble bar and kind of make a little divot, just gives the water somewhere to collect. That's a really good spot to plant. And so, yeah, we are going to see some mortality on a lot of these plantings. Some of them, I've seen some in the past that were not done really thinking about any of those nurse objects and things, and survival was really, really low. That's disheartening for everyone. It's also a waste of time and money and that kind of thing. So, we think about half or 60, even 70%, if you're getting lucky and you've got, some good rains and that kind of thing, as you get them planted, you can get some really good survival. You'll never see 100% of them live, but that's why we're doing thousands and thousands. And, on a property like yours, if you wanted to do a few hundred, we look at about 135 for ponderosa pine. We're looking at about 130 to 150 per acre. So yeah, I'm not sure how many acres you have there, but if you wanted to do several hundred, you'd probably get a really good stand out of those.
Yeah. That's great.
And Daniel, with this conversation, Megan and I realized that we could easily put together some resources for private landowners that summarized everything Daniel just said about tree planting. So we would be happy to put that together for you all and send it out and post it on our website as well, so you don't have to remember everything that Daniel just said. So it should be a good resource that you can share with your neighbors and anyone else who might be interested in tree planting.
Cool. Thanks, Hally. Great idea.
Yeah, thank you. We'd super appreciate that, and we'll be in touch.
Certainly. Yeah, please reach out. Happy to help.
I had a question about mulching and then following up the following year. So last fall I was hunting in behind Jack's Gulch and got my way back into where it had been mulched. And it looked to me like some weather had come through and a lot of the mulch had slid down the hill and was really piled up. Are you going back a year or two later and re-mulching those areas that you identified as high priority because weather caused the mulch to move farther down the slope? And then the second question I had was, you mentioned the stream bank restoration. I know exactly where that photo was taken. Can we volunteer to help on those days? And can you let us know when those opportunities are occurring?
Yeah, those are two really good questions. So I think we found that wood straw, the wood mulch stays better than straw in place. But that being said, with a larger event, you would see maybe some movement. So we are not going back to remulch areas from last year, but the CSU folks are studying some of the stuff that we mulched last year. So I think we'll expect to see, different coverage depending on movement and things like that. So it will be sort of integrated into their study, if you will, but we won't be able to go back and mulch remulch any areas from last year. I will say that we've been trying this year to really be on top of it with field verification of trying to find the right slopes and the right amount of rock cover to make it as effective as possible. So we look for slopes that are between 20 and 60%. And honestly, we usually don't get too much above 50% because I think if it's really steep and rocky, it's more likely to wash off. So we are trying to be pretty diligent in our field verification this year in hopes of it staying in place even better than previous years. As far as the stream stabilization project, we're still coming up with the plans right now. I'm glad you recognize the area. Yeah, I definitely see some potential for good work there. There may be a component of that work that might be done with heavy equipment since the road is pretty close by. If the Forest Service approves us to use heavy equipment, just would help us key in some of the treatments better into the banks so that they have a better chance of helping promote sediment deposition and slowing the pulses of sediment. So for that component, we probably wouldn't use volunteers, but we're still deciding it. And there may very well be a volunteer component, at least a part of it. And so we would definitely keep you guys posted on that. And if there is a volunteer component and folks from Monument Gulch want to help out, that'd be great.
Thanks.
All right, I'm curious if there's other questions out there. These are good ones. Okay, well, nobody asked this tonight, but I've been asked in the past, so I'll just share it as my sort of last topic. I know there's some interest from folks about just dealing with sediment and ponds up in the Monument Gulch area. And the coalition doesn't have a great funding source for that type of project at the moment, but I have talked briefly with the folks at Larimer County Office of Emergency Management, and they have a community mitigation grant that has already been awarded for 2022, but that they'll offer again in 2023. There's some information we can send in the follow-up, but in talking with the coordinator there, I explained some of what's going on in Monument Gulch with the ponds and the sediment, and he said that if the community were to apply together for a grant next year, since it's a community-based grant, that could be competitive, and if there's sort of if you guys have a bit of a maintenance plan, if you will, that you could talk about for what, sort of the upkeep looked like on some of the ponds, that would be helpful too. So I think that's a viable funding source for next year for those who are interested in thinking through sort of maintenance on the ponds in the area. I would just say that, you tend to see hydrological impacts post-fire for up to, for 5 to 10 years. So I would just encourage folks to, you can consider that funding source for next year, but you might also want to hold off a little bit longer if you can and do some maintenance on those ponds just a few more years out if you can, just so that they don't get another pulse of sediment, although we're all trying to slow that down. So just something to keep in mind if you have a pond and have been thinking about that.
Do you know what the application date is for that grant for 2023?
I think it will be in April, but I will send out some information. It was April this year.
Oh, wow.
So,
April of next year. So we've got plenty of time to get, okay.
Lots of time. But I would just encourage even more time if you think, if you can handle it, just to try and wait out some of the continued post-fire impacts that we'll see to some extent. Even with some of these projects that we're hoping to put in place, you could still very well still see some sediment coming down.
Yeah.
So that's the last topic I had on my list from some of the questions I've gotten from folks. But I'm certainly happy to answer other questions that are out there.
Well, not a question, but just a couple of comments. Happy to host a watch party if anybody wants to come up and watch and enjoy flying helicopter or seeing helicopters fly. So we'll be here, I'm sure. And then as Shayna, as you know, the Monument Gulch picnic is on the 23rd of July. So we hope to not have mulching that day if they do get delayed a little bit. But you guys are also all invited up to that. I know Shayna's traveling that day, but if the rest of you are interested in just seeing the neighborhood and seeing the neighbors that are benefited from your work, we'd love to have you up and join us for that picnic again, July 23rd at noon.
That's great, Will, and we will definitely do everything we can to be done before then.
Yeah, that'd be great. Well, it could be kind of fun to watch during the picnic too, as long as you don't drop it on us.
That's right.
The helicopters can come land and grab some food and get back to work if they want.
That would be great.
We'll definitely put that on our calendar, Will. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, for sure. And also, it'd be a good time to talk about other projects too, like a stream mitigation project or any other things like tree planting or stuff. You know, if you guys have some ideas or want to just talk to neighbors about what else they could do, it'd be a good time.
Yeah, that's a great point. So with the stream stabilization project, if we get the approval from the Forest Service to keep moving on that one, which I think we will, but could take a little bit of time, we would be looking for kind of that late summer, early fall sort of implementation timeline, if possible. So we'll keep folks posted on that. And you're right, that might be good timing for the picnic for topic. Okay, well, just wanted to see if there's no other questions. I'm guessing that Megan's going to shut us down for the night, but I'll hand it back over to you, Megan.
Great, thank you. And sorry if I cut you off, Bert. I'm actually in the same room as Shayna because that's the world we live in now. And I have my computer on mute, so I apologize if I cut you off. I couldn't hear you, but just want to thank you all for being here tonight. We'll definitely send out a link to the recording, and if you want to share it with any of your neighbors or family who couldn't be there, we would appreciate that. We will also share a bunch of other resources that we talked about tonight. But hope you all stay safe out there and have a great rest of your summer. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Appreciate you
everyone.
being here.
Thanks.
All right, thank you guys. I'm going to stop the recording here.